introduce you today someone who is a fellow colleague, someone who our office represents. And actually, Sheriff Dallas Baldwin and I have kind of a little bit similar paths. Although he was with Columbus Police Department for a lot of years, his officers loved him, and his sheriff deputies love him. And, you know, he was retired, I think, and in 2016, thereabouts, Sheriff, they pulled you out of retirement. You were happy as all get out. Happy as all get out. Now, let me tell you something. Being sheriff, especially of one of the largest counties in Ohio, with one of the largest jail systems in Ohio, is no easy feat. I worked in a county jail in Toledo, going to night law school in the mid-'70s. I weighed 135, soaking wet. Believe me, they could have bent me and snapped me like a noodle or whatever. So you had to learn verbal suasion. And I think one thing the sheriff's always been good at is communicating with people and leading, and he's done a fantastic job leading. He served with the Columbus Division of Police for 28 years, along with an additional 10 years as a reserve officer. During his first term in office, Sheriff Baldwin successfully implemented the Sheriff's Office Therapy Dog Program, the CID Police and Clergy Together Program, Diversity and Inclusion Office, and the Civilian Advisory Council. Sheriff Baldwin was born in Dayton, Ohio. He moved to Beaver Creek, which is nearby, in 4th grade and graduated from Beaver Creek High School. Following high school, like me, he attended the Ohio State University. In 1972, Sheriff Baldwin married his high school sweetheart, Barb, and again, since 2016, thereabouts, has been your sheriff. So without further ado, Sheriff, come on up, please.
Thank you. Mike, thank you. Appreciate the, it almost doesn't sound like me the way you described it. But no, it's been a real pleasure to be your sheriff. Got elected in 2016, and I can remember after the primary, actually it was 17 in the primary, or 16, I'm sorry, and somebody told me, oh, by the way, Sheriff, you know, you're building a new jail. I'm like, oh, that wasn't mentioned in the prior, or through the entire campaign. And it has been a monumental task. So I thought today, because this is obviously one of the most expensive projects ever faced by Franklin County, and I think one of the most important by far. When you're housing people and providing for their care that often have a lot of needs, it's one of the most important things the county can undertake. This jail started being planned back in about 8 years ago. And it's been an 8-year project. Now, when I say 8 years, a lot of the planning. We broke ground in October 2017 to begin the building. And with any luck, we'll be into it around April or May this coming year. It's been a long time, and that will open the doors. When the jail project is eventually done, it will replace the downtown main jail and the workhouse on Jackson Pike. Both jails, and you might ask why are we replacing them, they're over 50 years old. I know the downtown jail was actually built around 1973, 72, 73. And of course, I hear a lot of comments about that jail is so old, we need to replace it. Well, I was born a lot earlier than that, so I don't know about that. But it's old style. You know, when you've seen the old movies, Shawshank Redemption and shows like that, it's the old cell block style, 10 stories. And you can't watch inmates as you're walking around. You have to do rounds every hour on half hour and kind of peer into the cell blocks and make sure things are okay, and often they're not. In that type of facility, you don't have eyes on all the time. County Workhouse is a couple of floors down in Jackson Pike. Same concept, a couple of different, 2 different buildings, north and south, but it has the different levels, and you have everything from single cell to more of a dormitory style, but you're still walking around, and you really can't peer in and or keep an eye on people. Just peer in occasionally and kind of keep an eye on them. So with that in mind, the new concept in building jails became direct supervision, and this started back years ago after New York had the riots in Attica. They came to a direct supervision concept, and to me, in a really basic term, it's kind of like this. You're in a classroom, like the teacher in a classroom is watching everybody all the time, and that's the style that we're going to, direct supervision. So the deputy or whoever the corrections officer is, they're watching the inmates all the time to make sure that they're okay, they're not having a medical problem, they're not being assaulted, they're not being disruptive, they're just meeting their needs. And when I mean meeting their needs, we've undertaken a new philosophy in Franklin County that most jails have gone to around the country, or they're aspiring to, called strategic inmate management. Strategic inmate management is being taught by the National Institute of Corrections as part of the Department of Justice. And it's a way of actually making sure that anybody who's incarcerated, that their basic needs are being met. It sounds real common sense-wise, but more difficult when you think about all the dynamics involved when you can't see people all the time. We have about 40 to 45,000 individuals that go through both jails in one calendar year. And trying to meet the needs of that population becomes very, very difficult. Because we're talking about a population that often is not healthy. They're often come in with mental issues. They come in with addiction issues. And we try to address each one of those. And that's why the current design in both jails, it just doesn't meet the needs. It's just too difficult for the person incarcerated. It's too difficult for the staff. And it's too difficult for the medical personnel that are actually trying to treat and meet those needs. So if I could direct your attention up to the monitor up here, what you're looking at is the booking area of the new jail. The new jail is 429,000 square feet for the first phase only. It will house 867 inmates, which are the most, I want to say difficult, but that's the booking area, and people that meet have more needs. So, and it's also the hardest part of the build. We're continuing to build phases behind phase one. Currently, they're completing the pods for the female population. In its entirety, this jail will replace both jails, and if it's built to its entirety, it would have 2,900 beds. We have a daily population now of about 1,700, which we're proud that we dropped the population. But we know as the county grows that population will grow, so we don't want to come back to the voters down the road and say, oh, by the way, you need to fund another wing. We want to make sure that we're prepared for the future. When you come into the booking area, you'll notice it's entirely different. I made the mistake one time addressing the crowd, and I said, has anybody been incarcerated? And you know what I'm talking about. And some hands went up, and I'm like, I didn't mean that. I was just talking. But the current jails, when you walk in, they're crowded. I mean, you'll walk in now, and it's just a little cramped area with a counter, and you've got people that are actually being released and people being booked in. And it's just tight. And we can't, and as the population grows, those areas get much, much tighter. And they're dark, and they're dirty, because they're old buildings. This new one, if you take a look at the booking area, you can see it's very, very bright, it's very light. What you can't see to the right of where it says booking off the picture, there's a big seating area for male and female. And in that area, there's telephones, there's all sorts of food, vending machines, there's monitors, you can watch TV. They're actually playing a video that will explain the process step by step, because a lot of times people come into the jail and they don't have any idea what they're in for. They don't know the process. So when you come in, this video will explain every single thing that's going on and what to expect. Comfortable seating area, you're safe, you're separated. It's just like business. I know it's been kind of compared to like the DMV, when you go in and pull a number and sit and wait to go to the counter. It's pretty much what it's like. And like I said, you can make as many phone calls as you want to get out of there, because if you can bond out, better for you, better for us. You don't have to be in there. Prior to coming into the jail, you'll come through a processing area where the clerk of courts will have an office, and we'll have medical review and those areas. But before you ever come into the secured area, the clerk will determine whether you can make bond. And if you have a payable citation, a payable warrant, something like that, or reassign a court date, you'll never make it in the secured part of the jail. Arresting officers will bring you in, they'll process you, you'll be released, and you're on your way out, which is by far the way we prefer it. Now, once you are arraigned, once you are admitted and come into the jail, are we on the different, if you can put up the, I think I'm blocking it. Here we go. What you're looking at now is once you come through, you've passed medical, you've done a quick kind of an analysis of your background to see where, if you have any special needs that we need to be aware of, whether you're a previous violent offender or something like that. We need to know where to appropriately house you for your protection, protection of staff, protection of the others in the jail. So you go through the initial classification, and again, in this area, if you take a look at it, you can see how open it is. At the very far end, where the stairs are, that's kind of an outside recreation area. You can go out there, and there's doors at the end that are up very high, and they're secure, but they open up. A day like today, you might go out to that rec area, you might hang around out there and get some fresh air coming through. And for your own sanity, it just makes you feel so much better to be able to get out, do some exercise. When you come in and you see the seating area, you'll see the tables sitting around. It's all open. Everything is very, very open. To the left, where you can't see, is the deputy station. It would be, like I said, it's like a classroom. Deputy's sitting up there or standing. He's interacting continually with the population. There'll be about 55 people assigned to this housing area with one deputy. And you wonder about the safety. Through our classification process, we make sure that these are not the violent people that we have to worry about for staff and deputies. They're just in there to take care of the legal issue. But you can tell everything is in direct supervision. If an inmate decides they want to change clothes, take a shower, watch TV, it's all right there for them to make sure that their needs are being met again. A very safe environment. Key to the classification is once somebody is in this area, if they start to have issues, if they start to, their behavior changes, that's the key for the deputy being in charge of that pod. He's able to pick up on that through direct supervision, and if necessary, they can be reassigned to a more locked down type area if necessary. Ideally, that will never happen. If you look at the very top, I need to point out one thing. It's really hard to see, but along those top rails, there's a netting, because we still worry about safety. We don't want somebody falling over, being pushed over from a second floor, but it's very unobtrusive. You can see right through it. It's actually baseball netting. One of my majors was at a conference somewhere, and they visited a jail, and he's looking at the netting up there and thought, that's a great idea. It's a lot better than having bars everywhere, and just more of an open feeling. And you can imagine when your freedom is taken away, even when you're in a facility like this, your freedom is gone. And that has quite an impact on people, so it's very important to make them feel as comfortable as they can without sacrificing safety. If we can go to the next slide. I mentioned earlier that a lot of our population, when they come in, they're having significant issues. One of our biggest issues confronting us, which is no surprise, is addiction. Many of our people coming in have all kinds of addiction issues, whether it's drugs, alcohol. Detoxing is one of the most important things we can do. Bringing somebody in and start lowering that impact that addiction has on them. Currently, our detox area is nothing more than a couple of larger cells, so to speak, kind of a dormitory style, and that's where they're at. Again, it's dirty, it's dark. I mean, we do the best we can to keep it clean, but it's the old building, the old style. As you can tell in this new detox area, your medical staff is right there. The little area at the bottom with the plug-in, that's where the deputies and medical staff are seated all the time, but they're interacting continually. Beds are lowered to the ground because a lot of times people that are having addiction issues and they're coming down, they're detoxing, they're going to fall, they're going to have issues. We make it very clean, very safe, shower, change clothes all you want, and we have the medical staff coming in and treating continually to make sure that they're not having a crisis issue. We move on to the central control area. I might also mention on the detox, we've adopted a system called MATS, Medical Assisted Treatment. Medical Assisted Treatment is a program that's taken off around the country in correctional facilities. And when somebody comes in, you start trying to lower their dependency on the drugs. And we use everything from Suboxone to methadone, naloxone, whatever it takes to keep that craving down. And upon release, when they finally get out of the facility, they're actually supplied with Suboxone shots And we work with the court so they can come down and get additional shots with the court, or they can get through a provider once they're out. But it's very important to get these 30-day shots to help them seek the right treatment once they get out to keep that addiction down. Now what you're looking at now is our central control area. Central control, we have got, I'm not supposed to mention the number of cameras, but it's in the thousands of cameras in this new facility. And we all know the body cameras is a big issue in police agencies. It is for us. It's an issue for a lot of places. I've been asked several times if we're going to outfit our deputies in the jails with body cameras, and we are discussing that. But that provides a host of challenges when you try to have a body camera and you're respecting privacy. You have medical issues. You have the detox I just talked about. There's a number of issues that are present when you try to do a body camera all the time in the jail, but we do have, like I said, thousands of cameras within this facility. And you're looking at a kind of a NASA-type design for this command center. We went virtually to jails around the country, and we went to OSU, and we looked at a lot of places to see what kind of command center and control center they have. Have 6 stations that have monitors, and if you see on the wall, it's got the large wall of monitors. That can all be combined into one large picture, broken into individual pictures. And these 6 stations, they can virtually look at almost every square inch in that facility. And they have the ability to zoom in, move the cameras, get different angles. So the security portion of it is really well addressed. 2 monitors in there. 2 stations are also backup dispatching centers in case our patrol, we also have our own dispatching for numerous agencies in the county. And so we have the ability to do backup dispatching should that ever go down in our dispatching room or our radio room. If we can move on to and I mentioned earlier, a lot of people that come in, and there's been estimates as high as 40% of our population suffers from some type of mental illness or issue. That's a high number. I can tell you that when I first came on, a long time ago in '78, you had COPH. It was out on West Broad Street, State Hospital, and that was closed. And when I go back as a youngster, my mom worked at the Dayton State Hospital, so I was pretty familiar with the same concept here in Columbus as it was in Dayton. When those facilities closed, unfortunately, people that were housed in those facilities back in the 80s, I believe, they hit the street. And when you have people that have issues hit the street and they have no alternatives and they have no one to take care of them, they end up in jail. And unfortunately, that goes today. We have, like I said, up to about 40% of the people incarcerated have some kind of an issue that needs to be addressed through mental health. That can simply be counseling, it can be medication, it can be a number of things, but we need to have the right facility to make those treatments and those observations. Again, currently in the jails that we have, it's really difficult because they're small. They're the old style. This was not taken into account many years ago when these were built. This new, what you're looking at in the new facility is more locked down. And there's different areas. It's all under observation, but you're not necessarily inside with the person as a deputy for safety reasons. However, when you look throughout that facility, again, it's very clean. The treatment comes into the patient or the inmate. They don't go out. We keep everything without having to move them around too much. There's an enticement, and it's hard to tell from the picture, but when you're in there, if you're in a very closed area, your desire is to get out and be a little more social and get out to some other people. Well, you see that all the time. And that little thing has worked tremendously in other agencies, other correctional facilities, just to help somebody stay on track and to get them out. And we're social creatures and we like to be around other people, and this is a good example. And so we enjoy that. And that's one of the enticements to get, to help them meet the needs. We don't, if you come in with mental issues and they're severe or not, we don't have the option to tell you not to be there or kick you out. You're there. That's up for the court, prosecutor's office, my friend Mike. That's up for them to address. That's not our call. We don't decide whether you need to be there or need to be out. That's, we just house you, and that's our responsibility to make sure it's as safe as possible once we have you housed. The last place I'll finish up with would be our picture of our outdoor atrium dining area. Now, this is for staff, not for people that are incarcerated. When you think about staff, we have deputies that have worked 30-plus years in corrections. Everybody who starts in the jail, or starts in the sheriff's office, starts in the jail. Once they get full certification, if they ever decide to, then they eventually transfer out. Everybody starts working corrections. A lot of people choose to stay there because it's a very, very rewarding career. And I can say that having worked a career on the street in Columbus, and I get involved in the correctional setting, it's very rewarding. And I could see myself doing an entire career there if I was starting over. And a lot of friends that early years did that. But as a staff member, as a deputy, you spend more time in jail than the person incarcerated because you're there all the time. You know that you live there, and it's challenging. And it really takes its toll on you because you really do care about people. You're really trying to meet their needs while they're there, get them on the right track, and hopefully, if we do our job right and we get people linked up to the right services, they never come back. Because about 70% of the people that get locked up every day will get released almost immediately. They go back to the community where they came from. If your neighbor got arrested today, they'll probably be back home tomorrow or the next day. And we don't want to have them in an environment where they're bitter, they're assaulted, they're abused, and they come back and they carry that with them. We want to make it, safely and as pleasant as we possibly can, understanding they have their legal issues to take care of. About 95% of all people incarcerated will eventually be back in the community. And it doesn't matter what the charge is, but they are going to come back. Our goal is they come back and they don't return to jail. They become productive. They become good neighbors. They become good residents, and that's our goal. We are not the judge and the jury in a jail. No jail is. It's our job simply to bring somebody in who has legal issues to address. We take care of them while they're there. When their legal issues are done, then they go on their way and we release them. But that's part of this wellness that we worry about for our deputies and staff. What you can't see is about the size of this room, maybe a little larger. We have a wellness center that we have built. And it's a workout center for staff that they can access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's in the non-secured area, so they can drive in, come in and work out. We just worry that, over time, we want them to continue to be motivated and to be good representatives of the sheriff's office and the community and provide the service that you pay for and that you elected me to do. Our goal is, like I said, to reduce recidivism and to make sure that people are as safe as we can possibly make them in this jail, and that you get your money's worth from this jail. $350 million project is probably the biggest project I can think of that the county has undertaken. And is that enough to build it out to its entirety? I don't know. I'm not a budget guy, so I couldn't answer that. But I was telling one of the gentlemen here earlier, it was kind of a rude awakening. I have the largest sheriff's office in Ohio. We're 1,200 employees, and we have the largest jail system in Ohio. But I had the occasion to talk to the Los Angeles County Sheriff, was in town a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and we got to talking, and I mentioned this project, and he was very, very appreciative, very nice. And I asked how many, he has a multitude of jails, and I said, how many people do you have incarcerated? About 22,000. And we got to talking about money, and for the budget people in the room, they'll appreciate this. I said, what is your budget, by the way, for the sheriff's office only? And he said, $32 billion. And I'm like, what? And so I immediately went to the commissioner and said, I need more money. But that was turned down. But again, you can see this is a very, very important project. As sheriff, one of your primary duties is a jail. We service the courts, we respond to calls in the community, and we do all the typical law enforcement activities. But I think probably the most important job of the sheriff is to make sure that that facility is run appropriately, because we're dealing with people, and we're dealing with people's lives that often have a lot of issues that are hard to address. And keeping people motivated and well-trained and equipped to meet those needs is a difficult challenge as an administrator, because like I said, when you've got a daily population of around 1,700, but over a year, you're around 40,000. So every day we have people leaving and we have people coming, and you repeat that process day after day after day. And it can be mind-boggling at times, but I can tell you the challenge is well worth it, because we have a great community within Franklin County, and it's well worth to take care of our people that are going to live here and make it productive. With that, I will conclude.
Lead to questions?
Are there any questions? I knew that was coming. Yes, sir.
How do you handle visitors, family, attorneys, and so forth?
We have attorneys, obviously have pro visits, we call them, and they come in about any time they want to come in, and I think Mike Rankin can tell you, they come into the, they make a call, they come over, they visit, they drop in, and we do not interfere with the attorney-client privilege whatsoever. We provide them a safe, private area so they can have their discussions. And legal mail, we do not interrupt legal mail. We inspect it to make sure that something's not slipped in. But yeah, anytime. Family, again, they have visitation time to come in. They can visit. Currently, it's 3 days a week. We let them come in the old jails. That'll change in the new jail. And I'm glad you asked the question. What we're looking at now through our fund provider are tablets and little kiosks, so that through encouraging good behavior, we would like to increase the family visits. And instead of burdening the family with having to travel down to a facility, it is not easy all the time. And now in days of COVID, where you don't want to be on mass transit and get around, we want to use the tablets. And we can arrange that to where you can have a family visit through a tablet, just like FaceTime, which I do with the grandkids all the time. And I think that would be well received by the family and the person incarcerated. I think I'll go to you first.
Right. So you said that about 40% of the people who come in, they have issues, like drug related or alcohol related.
About 40% suffer from some type of mental issue. A much higher percent, well, and a lot of that's co-occurring disorders. They'll have an addiction, they'll have a mental health issue. One feeds off the others, but strictly speaking, mental health in it with others, about 40% of the population.
Would you agree that our community needs to provide more for taking care of those issues before they go to the prison? Then
we didn't talk ahead of time. Well, you are exactly right, and we have a unit that's not part of this discussion, but we created a unit called Community Intervention Diversion when I came in as sheriff. I felt very strong because I know from many years working the street, you'll have somebody who suffers from issues that you return on that call over, and I've had calls where I've gone back 5 times in a row. Somebody's got an issue, and not me personally, but a lot of times the officers, they get frustrated with dealing with this person, and the next thing you know, they're under arrest for disorderly conduct, and they end up in jail because it's an easy way to solve the problem. That doesn't do that person any good. They're going to come out bitter. They're going to be back because they're going to call the police again over and over and over. So we developed a unit. We're 6 deputies strong now because we're small. But when somebody is in crisis in the community and law enforcement responds, and they recognize that maybe they have a better alternative than jail, they call our CID unit. They're with a clinician, a mental health clinician, and they immediately respond and take that person. And they try to find a better alternative. And I can tell you, after the first 4 years of this program, only 1 person went to jail out of around 500 or 600 responses because they had a warrant that could not be avoided, and on that one they had to. But no, we know that many of the people that end up in jail, there's much better alternatives, but we need to have them in the community. We need to have places to take people, and sometimes they're just they're not there. But I can tell you Adam H. and some other organizations have done an outstanding job of trying to address that issue. Yes, sir.
How do you coordinate with Columbus Police Department services? We
don't have mutual aid because we're countywide, so we have authority all over the county. It depends on the service. If it's a run, if it's a disturbance call in the community, a lot of times if they're short-staffed, we'll get the call in a radio room, we'll respond that direction. They have a similar mental health unit that they operate. We don't really cross with them. They do their own response, we do ours. But we communicate with them all the time and share notes and that sort of thing. It depends on what it is. If it's an investigation, like the other day, the shooting occurred out on the east side. And we ended up being the lead agency to do the investigation because in that particular one, BCI that would normally do the investigations were involved in it. Therefore, they couldn't do it. So Columbus called us. And it really depends what the situation is as to whether we're involved with each other or not. We don't dispatch each other. We don't routinely respond on runs together, but we have a good working relationship. Yes, sir.
A lot of communities have had severe issues with police being able to really be police. And and staff issues and morale issues. Can you speak to that, please?
It's out there. The morale issue is low, and I don't think it's so much in the sheriff's office. Because we're a lot different than a municipal agency, and a lot of the criticism that's happened over the past couple of years in reimagining and reforming has an impact on the men and women that work in those organizations because they're in the unknown. They don't know what that means when it comes right down to how does that affect their job. We haven't had that so much within the sheriff's office, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge because when you have men and women leave the job, you have to replace them because you need a certain number of law enforcement personnel to provide safety and to actually be able to respond in an appropriate amount of time. We're all struggling to hire people. So it does become challenging, but as I mentioned earlier, one unique part about the sheriff's office, almost every agency will hire at 21 statewide. Sheriffs can hire at 18 because if I hire somebody as a deputy coming in, which I am hiring, by the way, we need to hire about 100 deputies for this new jail to open. But if you come in at 18, you're a non-certified. You don't carry a weapon. When you're off duty, you're not wearing a uniform. You're not making arrests. You work in the jail. You are a deputy, non-certified deputy in the jail wearing a uniform, but when you go home, you leave the job behind you, so to speak. So that makes it better for us, I guess, in a way of saying. As far as recruiting, we're trying to hit high schools. We're trying to hit a younger crowd because we know a lot of young people that do not choose college necessarily as a career path out of high school. We're trying to offer that option to them. Because a lot of times, if you've got 3, 4, or 5 years of idle time, sometimes that isn't good. So we'd like to capture you before you get too far out of high school, and maybe bring you in and have you look at a terrific career in the sheriff's office. It is a challenging time, but challenging doesn't equate to being a bad time. You know, I've always said in law enforcement, we need to continually change with the communities and changing times. And I think there's a false sense of security when an agency such as law enforcement, they get all their new directives and the rules and regulations, they get everything right up to date, and they sit back and they take a breath and they say, oh my God, we're done. Well, that's the time you need to start doing it again because times are going to change ever quickly. I've been in this job 44 years, and I can't tell you how it has changed from the first days in '78 until now. It's almost totally different, but it is challenging. Yes, sir.
What percentage of your deputies are non-white in Franklin County?
We have right now, we're right around I would say we're right around 16 to 18% using that guideline.
Okay, so that's higher than what the population of Franklin County would be.
No, it's that we're low. We need to do a better job. And I actually have a Zoom call today at 3 o'clock. We have employed a sheriff who has his own company out in Michigan who concentrates on the hiring process. And we've looked at our own HR to make a lot of changes. And when I came into office a couple of years ago, I designated a DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. We have a diversity team we've employed on helping diversify the agency. Because in all honesty, I don't think any law enforcement agency that I'm familiar with locally has done an outstanding job on diversity. It has not happened. In challenging times to recruit makes it even that much more difficult. But that's our focus, and I have a real deep-seated belief that our office should be reflective of the community. And I think we should hire from the community. Now, I've never been a fan of going to California and going to Texas and places to recruit people to work here because I think there's enough people here that need jobs and are terrific people and they have an interest in the communities. And so that is the direction that we are going.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you. My dream has been to be a CO, so I'm going to talk to you later. This is my ballot.